Welcome to Backyard OASIS, a podcast designed by and for older adults living in the beautiful Pioneer Valley of Western Massachusetts and produced in the tech studios at Greenfield Community College in Greenfield, Massachusetts. Backyard OASIS reaches out to older adults who seek knowledge to help them live more thoughtfully, healthily, and happily, who hope to inspire others with their ideas, and who serve their communities in the interest of the greater good. We hope you join us frequently in our pleasant Backyard Oasis for wide-ranging conversations with a diversity of people who are growing older and want to talk about it.
Hello, this is Christine Copeland with Backyard OASIS. And today we are going to talk about feet. And when I have mentioned this to friends of mine who are seniors and even friends who aren't seniors, I've noticed that their ears perk up and they say, I want the link to that one. My first guest is Dr. Kaye Clayton Jones, and she is the founder and the CEO of Footcare by Nurses, a Greenfield-based company that provides foot care in Western Massachusetts, in parts of Connecticut, in the eastern part of the state, the islands, and they are quite exceptional in that they visit you in your home. Dr. Clayton Jones came to GCC during the crash in 2007, and she was able to take a physiology and anatomy class here, and it actually turned her life around. So she will tell us a little bit more about that. And I'm excited to hear about her career because it sounds pretty amazing, but I'm also so eager to learn more about feet. My other guest is Lee Wicks, a dear friend of mine. I realized today that we are going on 40 years. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Next year, 40-year friendship. We are former colleagues and now friends. And she is a retired communications professional. She's also a writer. She's published a wonderful book and a memoir. And as a retired person, Lee told me that she just wants to be professionally engaged. But what was particularly interesting to me about this relationship between Lee and Kate was that Lee was interested in turning scientific knowledge into accessible language for the public. And that's what she's so good at. And I think that's so important in our day and age, to have somebody interpreting some of this more scientific and maybe elusive language for the common person. So I thought that we could start by just having Lee tell us how she met Kate, and maybe start there.
Sure. Well, I sought out Kate's care toward the end of the pandemic shutdown. My feet were in terrible shape, and I loved the idea that the care was provided by nurses and healthcare professionals. I was not ready to go to a spa in any way. And I'm a person who just loves to learn. So Kate cared for my feet beautifully and taught me so much. I walked in for a pedicure. I thought, now I'm going to have the sudsy soak. Mm-hmm. Instead, she had me walk. She looked at my shoes. She took out the insoles. She told me I wasn't curling my toes, and that was going to affect my balance and posture and overall well-being. She inspected my socks, and she told me that I was not lacing my shoes in the best possible way for stability. So I left, and I was so excited by that revelation. And I write a column for the local newspaper, the Montague Reporter, and I wrote about it. I wanted everybody to do it. And I sent a copy to Kate, and she said, well, let's do more of this. So since then, I've been helping her you articulated that beautifully. I just want to translate complicated things into language everyone can understand and embrace.
And take it from there, Kate. What are the most important things that you feel you have been teaching Lee as a sort of a representative of your client group?
So when Lee says that her feet were in need of care, there comes a certain point where they're a bit of a disaster, right? And coming out of the pandemic, we saw a lot of people who couldn't get access to care. They were afraid to go get care. They didn't know where to turn. A lot of the professionals that had been in existence before the pandemic, they were just not available. And so for me as a nurse, I have always sort of recognized that there was a person who had the courage to come and say help. Now, sometimes that's a person who, gets driven in by the ambulance into the hospital, and the system, in a sense that we are caught up in, can really depersonalize people. And so for me, it was just so incredibly important. It was not just your feet that needed care, but you as a person needed care. But more importantly, it was that connection of who are you as a person and who am I as a person. So there's a lot to the story in a sense of how we then continue, because you were curious, and I'm a learner, I'm passionate. But for me, my big thing is that I love to empower and teach people, which is how we can wrap this back around to Greenfield Community College in 2007, 2008. I was doing financial advising. We know that the markets were crashing. There were a whole bunch of people out there who had lost everything or on the verge of losing everything. And they had worked really hard, and they were in their 40s and 50s and 60s, which is not an easy time to rebuild your life.
Right.
And they came to this community college and they said, Uncle, like, I can't get a job at McDonald's. I can't get a job, whatever. The teenagers can't get jobs either. And so we had this huge problem. And those people who had the courage to step in and say, you know what, I want to survive and I need to reinvent my life, came through these doors. I had come through this door because I was looking for a job, and I got a job teaching personal business and finance to these adults and some kids who knew how to do a checkbook, but they just wanted an explanation of how in heaven's name the retirement fund just went up in smoke. And so we played in that space.
Here at this college.
Right? And so I'm somebody with learning challenges. I have some symbol recognition issues, and I had always been reticent to step into formal education. I had a bachelor's degree, which when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 was a major in skiing. Yes, I graduated with a geology degree, but there's a lot of other stuff going on there. And so I was your quintessential A through F student. And if you think about most academia, they say you need a 4.0 to do this or whatever else. And I was like, I'm just not smart enough. And so coming in as a teacher to empower other people who were questioning, it doesn't matter how smart you are, if you don't have a job, you don't have a job. Coming into that transitional place, GCC gave me the opportunity to take an anatomy and physiology class, and I said, well, if I fail it, I didn't pay for it. Mm-hmm. And I went and I sat in the class, and within about 10 minutes, I looked around the room and I said, these people that are sitting in this class, they want to go somewhere. And they were my age, some were younger, they weren't 20-year-olds. There were people older than me who were going to nursing school, PA school, whatever else. And I said, I want to be like them because they have purpose. Because in business, in finance, I was supposed to be selling security, mm-hmm. and security just went up in smoke.
Right.
And so for me, I needed integrity. I needed honor. I needed to be able to tell a truth in a space that wasn't always there. So fast forward, as I went through nursing school, I actually went to become a nursing aide, and I got told, yes, I can brush your teeth. Yes, I can put your hearing aids. Yes, I can dress you. Yes, I can clean you up, but don't touch those feet. And I watched what happened when you don't touch people's feet. And I'm like, what about Mrs. Smith? Oh, the podiatrist will be in, 3 months from now, and then they wouldn't show up. Mm-hmm. And these feet would just continue to grow, and we would adapt. Maybe Mrs. Smith would get longer shoes or something like that. And then
why, Kate? Why were you told not to touch their feet?
That's a really good question. And there's a big story to it.
Oh.
And the reason that I am the keeper of the story is that a couple of years ago I did a whole article on how podiatry came to take over the sort of realm of foot care. And a lot of it had to do with Medicare coming in and nursing just feeling very overwhelmed. So before the 1950s, nursing did everything. And the doctor came in, did a diagnosis, and nursing had an incredible amount of responsibility. They were the physical therapists, they were the occupational therapists, they were the everything. And if somebody needed care of their feet, well, they just took care of it too. Diabetes started to come up, and so we made this sort of bracket where Medicare said if you were diabetic, right, that was a medical issue. And foot care and diabetes, they can be totally scary. But so can leprosy. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the diabetic care came from what people had learned about leprosy, which also is a circulation, falling off toes kind of thing. And somewhere in there, nursing said, we've got 17 other things to do. If this profession wants to do it, go for it. Well, ultimately what happened is that, in a sense, nursing abdicated responsibility for it because it's a liability. Mm-hmm. And they said, hey, we have this other profession who wants to do it. And so nursing started to say, it's not our problem. It's somebody else's problem. And that's, I think, a problem that sort of starts this conversation of is when it's not your problem anymore, whether it's not your individual problem, like, Christine, can you still take care of your toes? Can you still bend down and touch them?
Yes.
But, right? And we'll just sit with the but, right? Yeah. It's getting harder. Lee got to the point where her toenails were just looking something out of a something or other model because literally as we get older and we start to dry up and our circulation changes and we start to have sedentary habits and we're not running around and whatever else, ultimately our bodies respond to that.
And they change. I've noticed that.
I'd like to add to that, such a big component of what you're doing is education. And I think about how women and men, we're educated for certain transitions fairly well. Onset of puberty, every kind of book, if you're going to have a baby, that's plenty of literature.
But you don't get that education until you're pregnant.
Right.
Right? Or until you, hit puberty or you have problems with that. And now you go seeking help. And the thing about feet, right, is that we start off with 6 or 7 years old and we learn how to tie our shoelaces. You do not have the cognitive ability to put together the complex puzzle of what a knot is at 6. You do it by rote. Somewhere in there, maybe 10, 11, somebody hands you a nail clippers and goes, oh, my God, Charlie, you got to go trim your toenails. And so you take these very dangerous-looking toenail nippers that cost $2 at the dime store, and now you've got thin, childlike nails, and you kind of hack at them, but nobody sees it, right? You start with sports, right? And if you're sliding up into the end of the shoe, you get an ingrown toenail, and you go and you could have a very infected ingrown toenail, and now you need medical care. And so now your thinking is, I need to trim straight across. I need to, and we just keep saying we need to trim straight across. But that's that point where it's like, why? And so I'm a why person. Like, why do we teach that? Well, for the vast majority of 10-year-old nails or even teenage nails, trimming straight across is fine. But if you look at the way that you trim your fingernails, right, you never trim them straight across unless they are acrylic, right? And now you can't actually use your fingers very well because you've got big acrylic things in it. What I think most people do not realize is that fingernails are the shields that protect the senses. You have about 100,000 sensors on your fingers, right? You don't need your eyeballs to feel behind you. If you put your hands behind you, you can sense. They are our senses. What's intriguing is that in utero, the first thing to form is our alimentary canal, mouth to anus, right? The second thing that happens in your tiny, tiny embryo when you're about 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks old, is you start to sprout these little buds, right? And these little buds are your sensors, and you are going to grow. They kind of explore, and every time they hit a sensation, right, we grow our long bones into our fingers and our toes. Right? And so they happen before our eyes do, they happen before our ears do, and they are how we connect into the environment. Your fingers have 100,000 on them. Think about how much you use your hands. Your toes have 200,000 on them because they do balance, they do proprioception, you can sense an earthquake, you can feel water. We forget that we are energetic sensing beings. And so as we grow into adulthood and we start to just be our brain, right, we look at our fingers and we go, oh my goodness, Christine might look at them and think that they're dirty. And so we care for them. But our feet go into shoes. And when our feet go into shoes, out of sight, out of mind, and as Atul Gawande will say in his book, Being Mortal, which is an excellent read, highly recommended for everybody, it says that he's hanging out with a cardiologist and a patient, and the patient is like, he's going through the cardiac stuff, and the cardiologist says, you need to take your shoes off. And Atul says, why? He's in here for a cardiology appointment. And the cardiologist says, there is a lot of shame written in people's shoes. We get dressed, we brush our teeth, we do our hair, we take care of what we see, but we disfigure our feet. Like Nureyev, the ballet dancer, right? His feet are just mangled. A lot of professional athletes, their feet are just mangled because they throw their feet into their shoes, and at a certain point, when the feet have been like, "Hey, I hurt. Excuse me, I'm hurting a little bit. I'm hurting." Right? We just keep shoving him to the shoes so we can go be the hero basketball player or the business professional. And men, we think of women as having deformed feet. Oh, my mother has those bunions. Oh, my mom had awful feet. Oh, my goodness, I didn't realize how awful my mother's feet were until I put her in the nursing home.
And so much changes at our age, too, with our feet. So I want to talk about...
Those bunions did not happen to that old person. They actually happened to the teenager.
Right.
Okay. So my sister is going to be interested in this because she just got a bunion. But to get back to those feet, I mean, the feet, I don't think when we lose our balance, or maybe we lose our ability to step up, maybe stepping up, we think our ankles, but there are things about our life that are anchored by our feet, and I don't think we think about that.
So let me go back, right? So I have I went into nursing as a 49-year-old with a career in aviation. And in aviation, you learn about weight and balance. If you put too much weight in the front of the airplane crashes. If you put too much weight in the back of the airplane doesn't take off very well. And so I had and I flew freight. And so you had to, when you pack the airplane, you had to be really careful where you put stuff. Boat people also understand this, but most people never think about where your weight and balance is. So that was sort of my background, right? I also just have a curious learning mind. I'm like, how does it work? Which when you're a teenager and you're like, why, how, why? It pisses people off, but that's just my learning style. GCC, by the way, taught me how to be an excellent student. So I will give this college excellent credit for those people who never thought that they were smart enough to get, even graduate. And I have 2 doctorates in part because this school taught me how to be a good learner.
Judy's going to love hearing it.
We didn't pay her to come.
So where I'm going with this is that my background was in weight and balance. And so I went through that
program.
Being an aide, being told I shouldn't do stuff. And I'm a rebel. Right? I will readily admit that when you say I can't do something, my little hackles go up and go, why not? And then I try to find a way to prove maybe it can be done, which makes me, some people call it defiant. I have certainly lost jobs because I'm like, well, of course we can do that. And that's not the point. But that's basically, I have this passion to be able to say there is truth in this, and that where there is a will, there is a way.
Well, so that relates to what you were saying earlier on at the very beginning of the discussion when you said that as an aide or a nurse, I don't remember, as an aide, you weren't allowed to touch the feet. And you went to nursing school, and then you have this business in foot care. How did you get in?
So nursing school also drove home you're not allowed to take care of feet.
And here you are doing it.
And so
as a rebel.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so we are allowed to file them, but if you've ever tried to file a hard nail, it's almost difficult.
I did, when I was talking about changes in education, no one ever told me that my nails would thicken.
Me neither.
You know, and so I'm a fit person. I want to drive the point home here too, is that you don't need to be severely ill or disabled to seek good foot care. It's just you hit a point where the angle, I'm right-handed, so I can do the left foot. I can't do the right foot at that strange angle.
Why is it that we grow shorter, right, but the feet get further away and we can't see them, right? And so now you've got a flashlight in one hand and something that, you know, it looks like a dog tool in the left hand or whatever else, and you just, and your hips don't work. And so you're absolutely right, Lee, is that people don't talk about it.
They don't talk, and I hope we don't run out of time before talking about some of the things like the rock, paper, scissors exercises.
Yes, I will get to it.
Good, because everybody can do those.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about what
so
people
where I'm going with this is nursing school said you can't do this. Right. And then I went to wound school, where I would see people getting their toes amputated for things that I thought was so preventable. And my TEDx talk basically talks about a story about a guy called Bob who was getting his toe amputated, and the surgeon was really intrigued with it and everything else, and it was his shoe that rubbed him. And I thought nursing could have played a role in that by double-checking. And so I think that anybody who's going to go out and try and change the world has a story that is that minute where it's like, I need to do something about this. So that drove me into weight and balance, and how could I have adjusted his shoe in his house, or what were the tools at hand to me there? Because we send people off to the expert, but the Bob lost his toe because he had been to the expert. And I was like, what went wrong here, and what did nursing not do right? And so I pointed the finger and I said, you know what, we need to improve this. So Shelburne Falls, there was a lovely nurse who was trained in Canada. I went up and I watched her. She was a foot care nurse, and I just fell in love with it because she had connection, and she was doing this phenomenal work, and she was actually using a Dremel because those were the tools that we had then, and she was just doing the best. But she talked about shoes, she talked about socks, she talked about good oils. She was very holistic and very natural, and so she really planted the seed of I could make a career out of this. Unfortunately, she ended up with cancer. And when she left this earth, she would have left 200 and something people without care. And they counted on her for their mobility, for their wellness. They would see her every 2 months. So a business needs customers to either keep coming through the door or new customers to come through. And so I looked at it and I said, I am never going to let my elders be without care. I am going to teach people how to do that. And so that's how I got into the teaching and the training part. And it turned out that I have 50 employees, and that's how, and we get phone calls that are like, hey, I want you to take care of my mother's feet. I've got my sister who's in a wheelchair. Can you just come to her home? Because it takes a day to go to a medical appointment. And if we can just show up, slide in, make people feel safe, have them be comfortable, whether you've got dementia or Alzheimer's, it's a beautiful thing that nursing can do.
When you were first talking about that, I remember as a gift for my mother's 90th birthday, I gifted her with Footcare. Maybe it was the same person. I don't remember. She used a Dremel tool, and and my mother thought she had died and gone to heaven. She just died a little early and gone to heaven. But I think also the point that you're making is that it's such a personal connection, and sometimes the medical system can be a little bit impersonal. You're waiting in line, and you have 15 minutes with the doctor, and this is such sort of an intimate thing, don't you think?
Absolutely. So feet are our roots, and they ground us to the earth. And we live in concrete right now. But if you take your shoes and socks off, it doesn't matter what age you are, and you just put your feet on the earth and you breathe, just like putting them in water, right? Like dabbling in the river, there is something just so soothing about it.
Yes.
So you asked me earlier about the sort of connection and what people, and me, I'm a scientist, right? And so what I saw is that it sort of started off with that, like, I can do something about nails. And then it was, how do I prevent this amputation? And then that weight and balance. And it turns out it all has to do with our big heads. So humans are really top heavy. That head on top of your shoulders weighs 12.5 pounds if you're lucky, right? Maybe 13 for some people, maybe 12. But it is the size and the weight of a bowling ball. And we put that bowling ball on a stick, and then that stick comes down our spine, and the spine is actually on the back of the body. And that stick comes down, and it is our little toes out on the end of the thing that is the counterbalance for the head. And so what happens as we age and we go into bifocals and stuff like that is our head starts to fall forward. And as it starts to fall forward, we start to lean more and more on our feet. But we are also sliding in our shoes. We're not securing ourselves into our shoes very well. And so we're using our feet for gripping. And then we are slipping. And then we wonder why we are falling over. And it's literally because if you take your hand, Christine, and you just crunch up your string, right? That's tension, and you can feel that tension all the way up into your shoulders.
Yeah, and I do that.
Yeah. So the way that we fit shoes and the way we understand is still stuck in our 6 or 7 year old brain. So I'm going to have you do your hand again, like really crunch it up like an eagle, like landing, like I'm going to catch that fish out of the water. Right?
And our listeners can do this too.
Yes, absolutely, right? And I want you to feel it in your shoulders.
Yeah.
Okay? So your shoulders are attached to your ankles, and I'll take it there in a second, right? Now, with your fingers, like an eagle, I want you to turn it into and just wave bye-bye.
Oh, yes.
Feel how lovely and soft that is, and it goes all the way up into your shoulders.
Yes,
okay?
that's true.
And so that bye-bye motion, kind of like playing the piano very softly. We don't play the piano like eagle claws, right? We play the piano very softly by stroking. That's how feet are supposed to use for balance. Your little toe sticks out as a lateral stabilizer. It goes sideways. Your fourth toe, it kind of can go sideways, but it also belongs to the 3 toes in the middle, and those are for forward balance. So they're kind of like outriggers. You don't need, if you're tipping over, sometimes you just need to touch a chair to prevent yourself from falling over. You don't need a big, hefty excavator to put you back up, right? You just need a little bit of outrigger. And so that's what the feet are designed to do, right? They can also pick stuff up. So if your feet are wiggly and free, your big toe is interesting because it can play a role in balance, but it also optimizes gait. We call it the windlass mechanism, which is basically where your feet sort of wind up. And then we have these reflexes, kind of like power steering in a car, that literally help us lift our 80-pound legs effortlessly. What happens is that when we are scrunching up our toes, it's kind of like we're walking around with a parking brake on. And then we wonder why we're off balance and off kilter.
So what prevents that?
For
an older person who's doing that, how can they stop doing it?
Perfect question, right? So the science that we are now looking at, so we started off in Footcare by Nurses just looking at how we could do nails better. Technology has certainly given us much better tools. We use ceramic burrs to really carve nails down to sort of function, but also like we have so many elders who come in and they're like, I would not touch a pair of sandals with a 10-foot barge pole. And the next time we see them and they're in a happy pair of Birkenstocks that fit them really well, and they're skipping and they're happy and they're like, oh my God, I feel like going dancing. And these are 100-year-olds. We take care of probably 200 people who are over 100, and they're still out mowing their lawn. So the reality of it is that your feet are part of a venomuscular pumping system. And that venomuscular pumping system, we know about the calf pump because physical therapy comes along and tells us that. But what they don't say is that the abdomen, the thighs, the calf muscles, and the feet are all connected into it. And that is 40% of your cardiac blood flow. So when you have atrial fibrillation, you're down 30%. If your venomuscular pump is not working, you're down 70%. You wonder why you're tired and you don't feel well.
So to add a very practical application and go back to your question, and then Kate will expand on it. But from her and the things, when I sit for a long time, I've learned just roll your ankles. Just roll your ankles and roll your toes.
Roll them?
Like do your shoulder, though, with it. So bring your shoulder up and back. Just do one, though. Do your right one, right? Right. So think about the shoulder, the hip, and the ankle as 3 rotating girdles. if your shoulder, think front wheel drive, right, is locked, right, your car, bicycle, if you lock the front brake, your back end is going over, you're not going anywhere. So one of the techniques that we have learned is that the shoulder binds the feet. The feet also bind the shoulder. So we're now in this iPad lean forward hunch thing, right? And as soon as you move your shoulders forward, you move your head forward, right? Because this is human anatomy and survival. And I promise you, I would never have read this in a book.
We're all sitting up straighter.
Yeah, I know.
As Kaye talks.
But it's so true. And just the awareness,
Yeah.
So you were talking about your injury, and I've had this hip injury lately, and I need to get up. And another thing I learned from Kate is I don't get out of bed without rolling my ankles, feet, and curling my toes because you've been lying down, and now it's dark.
You've got to get the pump going.
Yeah, it's dark and dead of night. I have slippery floors. I'm not. If I could fall if I just stepped straight off the bed, and it takes a minute, or you can do it before you get up in the morning.
So we know that if you don't take care of your roots, the tree dies. And so it's the same with humans. It's if we are not taking care of your feet, and remember I said the venomuscular system, if you are not pumping in your feet, you are down 40%. So our society says go for a walk. Well, hell's bells, if your hip hurts or your neck hurts or you just, you lost your spouse and you've got grief, like we have to put all of these other things, and then we forget how to be. And so what we do is we basically say, hey, human, number one, you are important. You can be on hospice, right? And you are still a person to us. You're not just a dead person leaving. You still have a story. You still have vitality to you. We come in and we restore dignity back to people, because there is nothing worse than looking down at your feet going, I am so ashamed of them, but I can't do anything about it. And so restoring dignity and function to old feet is such a gift. We then teach people about how to use their feet. So to rock, paper, scissors, which is an old childhood game. Like if I go 1, 2, 3, rock, 1, 2, 3, scissors, right? But I can do that with my feet. And if I clench my feet really, really tight, and then I spread my toes wide, and then I scissor them, I'm actually exercising the intrinsic foot muscle. So you said something earlier, Christine, right? Right, as you said, my feet have become weaker. How often do you practice rock, paper, scissors with your feet?
Never, because I just learned about it. On a practical level, just something that people can maybe take away with them. Well, certainly there was a lot here. But for example, my husband has been exploring zero shoes. Do you have any comments about, or any suggestions, I should say, about just some practical things? Well, certainly people could call you, and we will have that connection on the website and your bio on the website. But just what are some practical things that they can do if they're still in pretty good shape, but like are inserts good? Are zero shoes good? Right, so it sounds like the exercises are really good, and I'm going to start doing that.
So let me... number one is to recognize that it's not just a foot. It's connected to the body, and the health of the foot is so incredibly important, right? So that's just a good place to start. Skincare is really important. So we do a lot with vinegar and coconut oil just to restore skin health. That has to do with basically matching the acidity of apple cider vinegar and the acidity of skin are pretty well matched. We are not beings that really like water. So many people have fungal feet, right? And so how do you bring that back into control? Because your skin is the largest organ of your body, and it is your primary defense system. You don't want to be using strong antimicrobial soaps, especially as an elder, because that just kills off your flora. We know that minding your flora is important. We also know that foods play a role. So say, for example, if your blood sugars are way up, you feed yeasts and fungi if you are very sweet, right? Versus if you're not quite so sweet, your skin will respond to that. And so what you put in your mouth really plays a role in your health. We know that. So does picking your shoes. So the literature basically says when you are an elder, you don't want to be cut out from your senses. So like a pair of Hokas, which are beautiful running shoes, are really good if you want a big cushion. But if you're an elder that is struggling with balance, that's kind of like walking around on a mattress, right? It's very destabilizing. And especially if you're not secured into that shoe well. So I invented this thing called the one finger test. Mm-hmm. I'm going to raise my middle finger at you and say it's not polite, okay? Right? And it drives home a point that if I can stick my finger down the back of my shoe or I can stick it in the space, then I have not adjusted the volume of the shoe to secure the shoe to my foot. If when you walk, your heel separates from your shoe, then you are not secured into your shoe.
So I would like to add or interrupt for just a minute. I think a quick thing a listener could do after hearing this is take off your shoe, take out the insole, and now you take it from there. Because
and match up the pattern of the insert to your foot. Put your heel in the back, and if the widest part of the shoe is in the widest part of the foot, you'll be fine. But if you have to scoot yourself forward, then the pattern doesn't match. I don't know about you buying jeans, but there's some jeans I'm like, I wear a size 14 and I try another brand. I'm like, oh, I'm a 10.
Right.
Yes.
Woohoo! And then there's another, I'm like, oh God, I'm now a 27. So the pattern of your foot is unique to you. Your left foot is different than your right foot. And so you want to make sure that the pattern matches. And then once the pattern matches up, right, then you want to adjust the volume. So you said about those zero drop heels. We know that when you tilt forward, it changes your postural balance. Those zero shoes are fantastic for walking across grass, for feeling the ground, for really improving your sensation. I have a friend who ran the Boston Marathon in zero shoes, and she said it was the first time she'd run a marathon and her feet didn't hurt at the end of the marathon. So us moving our intrinsic muscles is incredibly important. I went to Croatia last year and walked around all of those Roman cobblestone streets, and my feet did not hurt because my feet were pumping and moving and gyrating. But we live in this flat concrete jungle, and so when we're walking on these, our legs just feel like lead.
Right.
So graduated compression socks are really, really important. They're not just, they come in all sorts of fashion. Merino wool is really good for the skin. So is alpaca. So these natural fibers, wicking, good for the skin. So you're trying to operate your feet to the best of your abilities. Postural tension is really important. How you carry your head, because our back, we're supposed to be on the back of our bodies, and that big bone that is your heel, that's where your weight is supposed to be. And then we're supposed to transition over the front of the foot. So you watch an elder on a walker, and they are very forward, they're very crunched up, their shoulders are locked up, and then we wonder why they fall. And I say, you know what, from a nursing perspective, let's just bring it back to how does this work? Because nurses are teachers. Right? And we are perfectly capable of, we get trained to do IVs, and we can give somebody a cup of medicine that, does amazing things. But ultimately, we can also step into this space that is between a nail salon and a medical procedure. And we can do this space which is care of a human being. So providing evidence-based care to the level where we are able to use our eyeballs, and we can assess, and we can say, hey, you know what, your skin is peeling. Your shoe is rubbing. That's not a diagnosis. That's an observation. And when we do these observations, we're like, how can we prevent this? Or, you know what, you have a very black toe right now, and you need to go and see a doctor. Right? Because the doctor will then do a procedure on you. So if we think about medicine doing procedures and nursing working in the prevention bucket, by educating, empowering, putting the care bits and pieces together, not only do you have a good business model, but you also have the ability to reduce pain, reduce amputations. And so that's where my passion is. I don't want to see anybody get their foot cut off for something that if a good nurse had walked in and done the prevention education, this person wouldn't have it. I want Lee to be able to wear her sandals and go out dancing with Roy right? Who I also take care of because they feel good, because their pumping is working well, their posture is where it is,
and their body
and
is
their
feeling.
bodies. And what's really cool about that is that it takes maybe 15 minutes for us to make somebody feel amazing, but because I taught her how to do it herself, she now goes home and does the practice. We stay connected. Yes, she helps me write my blogs and my posts and whatever else, but she has become, in a sense, a viable contributory person because she has vitality and interest. And that's, I think, the connection between our elders and their powers and their feeling better. And she doesn't need a pill for it. It's in her. It's attached to her from morning through night. So
I think that's a wonderful way to end.
I think
the
so too.
podcast,
It's
don't you think?
inspiring.
It
Yes.
is very inspiring.
perfect.
Okay, great.
I appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
Both of
so much
You're
for
amazing.
coming.
This concludes today's podcast. We're always looking for new ideas, so feel free to reach out to Judy Raper, Associate Dean of Community Engagement at Greenfield Community College, at 413-775-1819 if you have an idea you'd love to share. Special thanks to the creators of Backyard OASIS, Denise Schwartz, Chad Fuller, Dennis Lee, and Christine Copeland. Have a great day.